So, really, what does leadership look like in an era of flux? And obviously, we need to develop new skills, and we have been developing new skills. And gosh, I've been talking about emotional intelligence for 2 decades. I've been talking about spiritual intelligence, SQ, which is it's not what it sounds like. A lot of people zone out and they hear spiritual intelligence and they think it's going to be religious, or that spiritual intelligence is simply the belief that we are more than our physical reality, and that we can tune into the field of energy that surrounds us, even though it's unseen. And the reason I think the time is ready for this now. We're ready to talk about it openly from the perspective of, we know that energy exists. We feel it. We've had existential experiences with energy. We've had things happen that we can't explain. We've had circumstances where we're like, well, there is no rational reason for how I'm feeling right now, or the experience that I'm having. And, I'm somebody who's done alternative health methods for years and years and years. I've done breathwork, cranial, sacral. I've done network chiropractic. I've done Bowen therapy. I've done EMDR. I've done almost every modality that's out there, because for me, on the quest for growth and learning, wanting to better understand my life and what's happened and how to make sense of it, and to be, a better person. Although it's interesting, in the last, I would say, 10 months, I have been less interested in learning more from other people and more interested in consuming things that are happy and doing good and goodness in the world. So what I mean about that is I'm constantly learning, but I'm not on that self-development, gotta learn more in order to validate my existence mode, which was, I think, a big portion of my life. And I believe, again, that many of us, the self-development world, which I'm a part of, is great. But when we slow down enough to integrate what we've already learned, I think there's power in that. That's the phase that I'm in right now with all of that. But really, when we talk about leadership in the era of flux, the skills that we're being asked to develop now, beyond emotional intelligence and, as I mentioned, spiritual intelligence, is something that you may be familiar with, which is metacognition. Metacognition is the knower knowing about you as a thinker. So think of meta as bigger, cognition as how we think. So your soul self, or your energetic version of yourself, is able to observe you thinking. And in that metacognition, you're able to be almost as if you're a coach to your own self. And I'm sure you've had this experience at some point in your life already. But as we integrate metacognition into our daily lives, it becomes a way of being, which also contributes to being in flow. So when we look at metacognition, it's that awareness of, we're watching ourselves as we're having a conversation, or we're watching ourselves as we're doing something on our computer. And we're able to observe whether what we're doing is contributing to goodness or well-being or adding value, or whether it's not. And again, this isn't about self-judgment or self-recrimination, because I'm not about that at all. It's about self-awareness, because once we have increased self-awareness, we can make better choices. And so metacognition as a skill is the ability to just tune into that observer self on a more frequent basis. So I want you to think about a time when maybe it was during a really intense emotional exchange with someone, either super happy or maybe super angry or super sad, any of those situations. And you could almost feel yourself outside of yourself observing the interaction. And I've had that experience many times. I actually had it a lot even as a child, but not knowing that what was happening was metacognition. Because I could feel myself watching as if I was in my own movie or in my own story. And then it would go away quickly. So it's almost like a level of realization, and then it disappears. But when you have that level of realization, you're able to see your behaviors, and you're almost able to act as your own coach, which you go, okay, well, I liked what I said to that person in that conflict. I'm going to do that again. So you're reinforcing that positive patterning. But you also might have seen yourself lose it and not be your best self. And so you also, in your metacognition, are able to go, oh, I'm not happy about how that went. I'm going to choose my behaviors. I'm going to choose to apologize, or I'm going to choose to set that straight, or I'm going to choose to not do anything with the other person, but on my own basis, plan on how I'll do it differently in the future. So that's why I talk about these new skills for leaders, because it goes beyond the mind. It goes to the ability to sense energy. And some of you who've done NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, you know this whole concept of mirroring. You know, if somebody is leaning forward, you lean forward, and you're building this camaraderie between you, an energetic buildup. This is kind of like that, but it's higher level in that we're not mirroring physical movement. We're actually tuning into the energetics of what's going on between us, and then we're adapting and attuning to refine our interaction based on that adapting to the energetic. And I'll give you an example of that both in a one-on-one and also in a group for me. So one-on-one, how I experience that is if I think of a time when I was really pleased with how I behaved in a really, really difficult circumstance. And I could see myself in that moment. And in that moment, my intention was to be the most loving version of myself I could be in that moment, given the circumstance. And my observer self was monitoring that. And it wasn't performative. It's not like I'm performing being a loving person. It's that my observer self, almost my soul self, was saying, Cheryl, how can you show up at your most compassionate and present and loving for this circumstance? So that's an example of one-on-one. I'll also give you an example where I wasn't a great human being and I was in a conflict and my observer self was watching me and I could see myself going, oh, that's not how I want to behave at all. So I was able to course correct. And instead of continuing the conflict, able to tune into the energetic of the other person, come from a place of love and presence and be able to redirect what I was saying and how I was behaving in that conflict. In a group environment, because I do a lot of presenting and public speaking and professional speaking, I have fine-tuned this metacognition on a large scale in that I will be in a group of people and I will be observing, I'll be speaking, but I'll also be observing how the energy in the room is responding to what I'm saying. And my observer self is being able to observe myself as well as everyone else. And that is a skill I've developed over time. And it's an ability to trust in the energetics of what's going on in the dynamics of humans being together. So as leaders, metacognition, how that skill development helps us in times of flux and how it makes you the most flexible leader is it allows us to come out of the hard reality of the circumstance and the exchange and allows us to shift to the energetics, which then allows us to come up with different behavior choices and different word choices and different exchanges with the people that we're interacting with. Another thing that I think is beyond metacognition is union cognition, and that's a term that I made up, union cognition, which is we're able to focus on positive outcome from an exchange. So we're holding that metacognition, the observer self, but we're also holding a union cognition, which is we're setting that union intention. My intention is that I feel more connected to this person than before we started talking. My intention is that this audience feels inspired and connected by the words that I choose to bring through, and that they leave here feeling better than when they came in, that they feel like value's been added, that their energy's been expanded. So union cognition as a leader means that your team feels that even though there's high stress, high pressure, high demand, high deliverables, high strategic goals, that through your leadership, we are connected collectively in union. And in metacognition, they're tapping into the fact that you're able to see from a different place and a different level. That's true leadership in today's era, in my opinion. And so building these skills of metacognition, union cognition, these are not going to happen overnight. They require constant vigilance. Of course, you know the term hypervigilance from a negative aspect, which is where we focus on things that we're worried are going to happen. That's a fear-based response. I'm actually talking about awareness vigilance, and it's a vigilance towards goodness and union and connectivity and collaboration. And so, as you can tell from this podcast, I get really passionate because this is the this is the joy of leadership. And that's when flow happens, is when we're exercising metacognition and we're exercising union cognition. All of a sudden, we feel really connected to all people and all things. And that's where I think we're heading. And so, as a leadership skill, flux is causing us to have to access energy, which AI and technology will never be able to do. It can mimic the cognitive part, the brain, the thinking. It can mimic that. It cannot love, it cannot emote, it cannot connect. It is innately human ability to do that. And that's why I feel pragmatically optimistic about where we're going in the future, but also as leaders and the skills that we need to develop.